What does your spine have to do with your hearing? This is the focus of today's story, both with a child who was 5 years old, had extensive tests and they could not find the source of his deafness, as well as a janitor who had an injury to his spine and was then able to hear through a chiropractic adjustment. You don't want to miss this episode of What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure, Stories of Innate podcast. I'm Jenna Quinton, your host and founder of Adjust Your Media. I can't wait to share this story, but also talk to you about this principle of loving, giving, serving, and doing out of your own abundance without any expectation of return. Today's guest is a family chiropractor in Delray Beach, Florida, a speaker at Dynamic Essentials. Welcome, Dr. Marilyn Shore. How are you?
I'm doing near perfect.
Near perfect. I love it. Awesome. Okay, so like we said, we're sharing stories of chiropractic, and I know that you have years of wonderful stories. So go ahead and tell us one today.
Okay, so I was sort of thinking about it. Actually, I really wasn't. And one popped into my head because there are so many. And actually, when there are so many, you can't think of them, and this one popped into my head. And actually, it was a long time ago. I can't even remember because I've been in practice 38 years now. And why it's a poignant story to me, and this will help teach people about how chiropractic started, was I had a little boy brought into me. He was 5 years old at the time. And oh my God, he may be grown by now. In fact, he probably is grown by now. Anyway, his mother, I remember, was a massage therapist, and she brought him in because her son was deaf. And they had brought this child to all these medical specialists. They really couldn't find anything wrong with him, but he couldn't hear. And they took him to the Research Triangle of North Carolina, CAT scans and MRIs and all kinds of specialists that went to fancy schools, whether Harvard or Yale. So if you know about the Research Triangle of North Carolina, it's very prestigious hospitals or clinics or whatever he went to. And with no success, he still couldn't hear because tests will never heal you.
Yeah. So in all of that, they didn't really find any source or reason.
No, it wasn't like his bones in his ears were damaged or that he took some horrible medication when he was a baby that destroyed his hearing, which actually is common, especially if they give antibiotics, particular antibiotics to children.
Wow.
And cause deafness. So anyway, she brought him in. And of course, in my education, I told her that, I don't fix anything, that I adjust the spine, remove the interference that's blocking the body from healing, and then we can watch what happens, right? So sure enough, after about a month of getting adjusted, his hearing comes back.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I didn't do anything special in terms of, I didn't give him any herbs or medication. I removed the interference at the top of his neck. As you know, Jenna, it's called the atlas.
Yeah.
And to make it simple, as one of the chiropractors used to say, remove the hard bone from the soft nerve. And it's not quite that, but it is essentially that. So if you have a kink in a garden hose and the water can't get out, the plants die, basically. So what was happening, whatever nerve flow was going to his ear stuff, and I'm going to say it like that, wasn't supplying him with the nerve energy that he needed. And so he couldn't hear. Well, I did. I mean, I don't like to minimize it, but I did something so simple. I checked him for what we call subluxation, which is where vertebrae are out of alignment, blocking nerve connection or nerve flow from the brain to the body. And I removed it and the body healed itself. And thus he could hear afterward 100%.
Wow. So you mentioned that this kind of was telling people how chiropractic started. So tell us that story too.
Well, if you're a chiropractor, you know this, and there are some chiropractors anyway that relate this story about the first chiropractic adjustment. And I will say this is the first known documented chiropractic adjustment because I truly believe that the spine, the difference is there wasn't a science, philosophy, and art behind it, but that people probably have been getting adjusted for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. But like I said, no science, art, or philosophy to put it in perspective of a profession. and using that so that you could actually have named chiropractors that go through training programs, school, so on and so forth. So anyway, D.B. Palmer, who was the so-called founder of chiropractic in 1895, who was from the Midwest, like you are, Central Time, and he was studying the relationship between the spine and the central nerve system, and he noted, well, if you have a vertebra in the spine that's interfering with any of the nerve connection from the brain to the body, then your body can't function at the highest potential. And he had noted there was a janitor in his building that had this lump on the side of his neck. And he proceeded to what they call rack it back into place. And it happened to be, they used some strange language back then. And it happened to be that this janitor had been deaf for quite a long period of time. And when he adjusted him, his hearing came back.
Yeah.
So again, take the kink out of the hose and the water can run again.
Yeah.
When there's interference from the central nerve system, the body can do the job to heal itself from inside out.
Yeah, I'm going to put the testimonial that that janitor wrote. I'll put that in the show notes because it really is interesting that he said he had been hurt. His spine had been hurt and that he knew that that was the moment that he lost his hearing, but nobody else had been able to connect that injury had been to his nervous system, which affected the nerve flow to his hearing, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. So pretty simple.
I think about how a lot of families know that chiropractic helps with ear infections and that that is kind of a similar region, a similar area to your story because parents think, oh, this makes sense because if the ear canal is more horizontal in kids and it doesn't drain, and they think about like the biomechanics of ear infections and needing that to drain, but they're not really thinking about the nerve flow and that's what you were sharing of that
Mhm,
this is increasing nerve flow to wherever it needs to go,
mhm.
whatever the symptom is that's presenting itself, whether it's deafness or ear infections.
Or sinus problem, or
Exactly.
it can be stomach problems because we listen to our patients and we hear their symptoms, but we know we don't fix symptoms. We open up the channels and then all kinds of things happen and you don't even know where it may be. The same nerves that up here could affect the stomach, could affect, like I even said, because most people think chiropractic is for musculoskeletal problems, back
Hmm.
pain, neck pain. People come in sometimes and I go, no, your problem's the top of your neck. And it's hard for them to believe because we're so into like, we have tunnel vision about, well, if my back hurts, that's where the problem is. It doesn't have to be that. So,
Yeah. So you started out as a nurse, right? Working in New York City hospitals. What changed for you? How did you begin to learn all about this chiropractic world?
well, I've told this story before, but I, sometimes in life you have to do things to figure out what you don't want to do as opposed to what you do want to do. I never really wanted to be a nurse. I was born a long, long, long time ago. And during my first year of college, it was kind of during hippie times and so on and so forth. There was a book called Our Bodies Ourselves. I took this class called Our Bodies Ourselves. You may have heard of it before. I don't know. It's a very famous book. And it's about women just understanding, like, especially back then, there weren't many women gynecologists or OBGYNs and stuff like
Mm.
that, just getting to know their bodies. So a lot of it had to do with childbirth, nursing. And so I had decided I wanted to become a midwife. This was after my year and a half of college. I dropped out of school. I took a little bit of time out. And I thought at the time I needed to become a nurse midwife. So I went to New York University, right, Manhattan, and I got my nursing degree then. But what happened was, as God's plans, you just never know how things are going to go. I couldn't get a job in labor and delivery. You had to have 2 years before that. And I didn't want to work on the gynecological side of it. So I decided, and this is so crazy, I decided to take a job in a hospital called Mount Sinai in New York, which is like a big teaching hospital there, on an experimental chemotherapy floor. I mean, it couldn't have been more opposite. Toxic medication, giving toxic
Yeah.
experimental medication. And everybody was between like 15 and 65 because you can't experiment on older people because you don't really know what they're passing from anyway. So it was a very profound experience for me. because I probably held 50 people in my arms as they passed, like tragic, tragic, horrible deaths. And I gave them, these toxic chemicals.
Yeah.
And it kind of made me start questioning things. And I continued, I left that job after 2.5 years, and I continued in other areas of nursing. And I was working in the emergency room at Lenox Hill Hospital in New York. I was sitting at the desk, right? And one day I said, I'm going to be a chiropractor. Now, understand, I had never been to a chiropractor. I didn't know any chiropractors. My parents had never been to a chiropractor. I just said, I'm going to be a chiropractor. It was like Field of Dreams, if you've seen
Wow.
that before. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be a chiropractor. So I started looking into it. I didn't know anything about any schools. I only knew that I didn't want to go to a medically oriented one. And I knew that I wanted to be on a coast. Sorry, I didn't want to be in the okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I didn't know that many schools. And what it came down to were two schools, and one was in Oregon, Western states, didn't know anything about it. And the other one was Life, which was in Georgia. And just through a series, it's like God directed me where to go. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy because the requirements to get into Life, I don't want to get into details, but it was on a quarter system. The other was on a tri system. It just worked out better for me. So there I go. I went to Life. I was fortunate that Dr. Sid was there, and he was fairly young at the time. And I'll never forget, and he said at assembly, when I was first there, is that you could never get help from a pill, potion, or lotion. You can only get it from the inside out. And the light bulb went off, and my God, like that's it. And I was one of the ones that I had never been adjusted before I went to chiropractic school. And some people make fun of that, actually. They go, how could you not be adjusted? I go, well, I wasn't. That was just my journey. That was my journey. I really didn't know much. My start was very different. I still very much integrated my medical head stuff with the chiropractic stuff, a long time. So, I was a slow learner.
Well, but at the same time, it gives you such a unique and great perspective. So, what are some of the ways that you love to tell your patients that health comes from the inside out, from all of your background? What are your favorite ways to share stories and just educate your patients?
Well, over the years, that's changed a lot. People will say I'm very forthcoming in my office. Like, I don't beat around the bush. And so when people get into all their stuff, I'll listen for a minute and I go, look, the bottom line is this. I move the bone and God does the healing. Any questions? Ask him, her, or whatever your belief system is. And just think of me as God's mechanic. I open up the channels and God does the rest, period. That's it. So I try to keep it simple now. And they go, oh, you know what I mean? Like, aha. And of course, sometimes I'll share some stories or something like that. But I don't beat around the bush. I don't get too heady about it, just like I'm not even with you. I'll say nerve juice. And, unless I feel somebody's a really analytical, technical person. And then I'll get it because I can do it. I have that background and knowledge and stuff where I could throw those punches also. But even people that, the medical doctor comes in, an engineer, or like very analytically minded people, ultimately they want the same thing as everybody else, is to feel better and to function better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love that you also you do it simply, but you do it with so much fun too. You sometimes post about parties and patient appreciation days. And after 38 years in practice, I think about like even just my children's birthday parties and how much work that is. So why do you go to that extra effort to just have fun in your office too?
Well, you have to keep it fresh. If you don't keep anything fresh, and that's what you do for people. And I'm not really that fabulous at that in that social media area. It's just not I come from a different generation, and it's just, you guys do that. It's like part of your DNA, do that. Like, you start young, you're on computers, you're on tablets, you're always, the way you type even, it's like, I watch my daughter, I have a 30-year-old daughter. She's like,
Yeah.
And I'm like, and honestly, I know it's necessary, but it's like not fun for me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I go on Instagram and stuff. I see a lot of people's posts, and I know it's important, but most of it is like, what most of it is like.
Yeah. I love it that even when you speak at DE, your song is always Dancing Queen. And I think that you should focus on what's fun for you and focus on the things that you are so good at and bringing that light and that joy to people and educating them in those ways that are fun for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, look, social media is a great way of teaching people now. In my day, we did screenings all the time, and that's what you did. You did screenings, you did outside talks. You don't see that much. And there'd be like 10 chiropractors at a screening. I mean, where we are, you don't even see them. My dog's going to jump up on my lap right now. I feel
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm a puppy. What do you want? Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
Yeah, my dog is 80 pounds, so I very much encourage her not to jump up on me. I should have gotten a cute, small little dog that I could do that with.
This. Well, part of my thing was I had to have one that I could pick up easily, you know. So
Yeah.
anyway, she's great. She comes to the office every day and jumps on everybody else's lap.
Well, I love that too. I think that that's such a special way of, you have a great way of just showing people love and giving people love. And even if that's through your puppy, and you have spoken about at different times and at DE, this principle of giving, loving, serving, and doing out of your own abundance. If anybody hasn't heard that before, tell us more. What is that and why do you do it?
Okay, so I don't think that extends just to chiropractic. I just think that extends to life. So our purpose is to love, serve, and give out of our own abundance without expecting anything in return. And so you can extrapolate that to any situation in your life. And so if we do that as part of our purpose or mission statement, whatever you want to call it, then everything you do in your office has to be about that. So for instance, me advertising for pain, would not fit in that purpose for me. You understand what I'm saying? That wouldn't be congruent with what my purpose is. So if I go in the office, and it's not just me, it has to be my staff, it has to be the dog is the ultimate lover and server and giver. And I hate to say it, but you know what? If she's not there now, and I had another one a year and a half ago, it makes such a difference. Like they don't care if they wait, they get on the ground with her and play with her. But she happens to be not skittish at all and loves everybody, loves the kids, loves other dogs, loves people. And so she's all heart. And that we aspire to be that heart and that love and giving so much to our people and giving them hugs. Dr. Sid always talked about giving this handshake, happy to see you. But, we hug in our office. It's more whatever you feel connects you more to each person. And it's all about the connection.
Yes.
It's all about connecting with the people, whether it be the kids, whether it be the 99-year-olds. And sometimes it's tough. You got to love someone. Sometimes you don't like them, but you got to love them.
Yeah. Well, I love that picture of the puppy being the poster child for that because it's true, like how quickly dogs forgive us and how, yeah, the dog doesn't say, okay, well, if I let you, snuggle me and have a little cry, then you better take me on a walk later. They don't negotiate with us or things.
Are you talking about your children?
No. No, if
kidding.
I snuggle the dog, she doesn't ask for anything back. But I do want to play devil's advocate for a second and say this idea of giving, loving, serving. What if we get into a spiral and we're just like, I don't feel abundant? What can we do then?
I'm not saying it's all roses, it can be very challenging. You lose staff, you're in pain or tired. All of a sudden, you have a bunch of pain in the ass people coming in, excuse me, whatever it may be. It's part of the challenges of it's not just being in practice of any business. I'm sure you have it too, And if everything were perfect all the time, it'd be really boring and you wouldn't attract a lot of people because you have to rise above it. So it's never going to look flatline. Then you're flatline and you're dead, inside. So, and that's why, see, now she wants my attention here. You see, so she's bugging me. So that's why, we do the 49 breaths, which is a meditation that we do to get back on track, listen to podcasts like yours. We do our Monday night calls where we have guest speakers like you were there.
Yeah.
And I thank you for that. And so it helps keep us, if we're here, that we can go to here and remember that aha moment again and go, this is what I'm really here for. This is my purpose. Get out of your stinking thinking. Don't have a pity party and get over it.
Yeah. I love that you bring up the 49 breaths because That's such a great thing. If anybody doesn't know it, it's what Dr. Sid Williams taught of sets of breaths, diaphragmatic breathing, if I'm saying that right, and with affirmations in between the sets. And I love that you bring that up because it's not just a mental thing, it is also a physiological change that you're bringing about. And that is a great reminder. I'll put a link to where people can learn more about that. But it is those moments when it's like, oh, I am so stuck in my head, and getting back into our heart and our purpose in those
Mhm.
moments.
And when you see a lot of the successful chiropractors, people see the sort of like the periphery, all the glory and how successful they are, and they don't know the challenges they have and how much energy they put into becoming who they are over the years, not just physically, emotionally, and mentally. In my youth and your age category, my 30s and 40s, did a lot of work on myself, a lot of work on myself. Yeah, through DE, but also I, worked with other mentors, did a lot of other breath work, a lot of other meditation, a lot of personal growth work to break through the barriers that I had that were blocking me from having the practice I want, the relationships I want, especially with myself. See, absolutely. So, it's not all roses, like I said before, but you do the work, and sometimes you want to do the work and sometimes you don't want to do the work. Sometimes you have to force yourself to do the work, but that's part of being human. And some people are more disciplined and motivated than others, and you can never try to be like somebody else because then you fail and you just
Yeah.
be harder on yourself. So
Yeah, this kind of loops it back around that each of us has our own story. And like you said, all of the ups and downs of life and not flatlining, each of us has that character arc. And we can choose to how much of an arc we're going to make. But if we're the main character in this story, are we going to be the main character? Are we going to grow as that main character? And, what I love too is this thought you mentioned mentors in all the great stories, there's a mentor. Whether it's Lord of the Rings and there's Gandalf, all of these stories, they have a guide, they have somebody who is telling this imperfect human, here's the journey, here's the quest, and the friends that they bring along with them. But I love that you have shared your story. As we kind of wrap up, I'm going to put links to where people can find you, links to the 49 breaths, all of those good things, because, I think we do kind of, like you said, get stuck in our stinking thinking. And we think that, well, this isn't a very good story that I'm part of. And it's important to continue to grow.
absolutely. Absolutely. We have to grow. And you're doing a great job at that, by the way. I see all the energy. I don't want to say effort, but yeah, the effort you put into connecting with people, helping people, making a difference in their lives. Just, yeah, I can feel your soul and your heart. I know you work with Jill, and I thought you did a great job at the FCS convention. It's the only
Oh,
one I really paid attention to.
that
So,
was so fun.
yeah, I just couldn't believe you did that for 4 hours, but
That was a great workshop. And yeah, it is so fun to be able to. I am so passionate about helping to raise chiropractors' voices, helping them to tell their stories, helping them to, like, those moments when we all get in our heads and we're like, I'm not very good on video, or whatever it might be. And it's like, that's a narrative that doesn't have to be part of your story anymore.
I get that one.
Yeah. I've got my own narratives that I've got to throw out the door too now. So
Yeah, absolutely.
well,
Thank
thank you for sharing today. And thank you for sharing this amazing story. Like, what an incredible thing for you to be part of with this child and him being able to function and hear and grow and thrive. So, thanks for being with us today.
But thank you so much. You look beautiful, by the way. I
Oh,
will see
thank
you at
you.
I'll see you at DE. All
Yes,
right?
I will. Have a wonderful day.
You too, sweetie.